So man, how you feeling, man?
Oh, I'm good by God's grace, man. I can't complain.
That's
You
what's
know,
up.
you know. How about you?
Man, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm good. I heard your president speak. He quoted the great African from Hippo, Saint
Man,
Augustine. You
he
know,
did. He did. Man,
he
okay.
quoted he
Man,
he
okay.
quoted him, man.
That's all right. It's like I heard. Speaking of the president's speech, man, I did listen to it. Um, it's about. It's interesting. When we talk about these appeals to unity. I've been asking a lot
Yeah,
of people, what do we mean by unity? You know, what are we talking about when we talk about that? That's the question, right? And I know I'm a lot more subdued today, right? Because it's a lot more pensive mood in terms of it's nothing really excitable. You know what I mean? Like to be excitable about in that emotional sense. Um, but when we think about unity, right? When we look at okay, well, where do we go from here? Chaos or community, right? Like we talking about unity. How are we defining that term? You know,
hmm.
when we here's the thing that we fail to understand all the time, right? That white supremacy is more than just folk out there with pitchforks. White supremacy is more than those who stormed the Capitol. There were white supremacists on the inside and on the outside. There were white supremacists on both sides. That's the one place where we can't agree. There are white supremacists on both sides. And so, we can point the finger at Mitch McConnell and them. We can point the finger at, um, you know, what's his name, Billy Graham's son and them, Franklin Graham and
Yeah,
them.
Frank.
We can point the finger at all them folk, but we got to point the finger at Joseph Biden and them. We got to point the finger at Bishop Curry and them, at on the liberal side as well, that have upheld and enforced white supremacy. Because what are we talking about when we say unity? Can you have unity where black lives don't matter? And I don't mean, oh, black folk ain't getting shot in the street. I mean, black identity does not matter. Black identity is not valid unless and until it conforms to the identity established by whiteness. Whiteness gives us a menu of options for who we can be. You can be the black man with dreads like this, like that. You can be the black man with the bald head like this, like that. If you're going to be in certain spaces, you can be the black man with the beard or the mustache, but not both. You know what I mean? Well, and that's the trivial aspects, right? But you can be the black man that, that shucks and jives for the right, or you can be the black man that shucks and jives for the left. You know what I mean? There's a menu of options that we get to choose from because our perspectives don't matter. Our thoughts, our opinions, our sense of self doesn't matter. When I speak on essential mattering, I'm not talking about the freedom to not be shot by the cops, which should be had. I'm talking about the freedom to determine who you are without the weight of whiteness having a say. How can we have unity if that doesn't exist? Do we really have unity when the self that we are uniting unto whiteness is a self that is subordinate to whiteness, the self that is subjugated to whiteness? What is this unity? I don't know what you be thinking about when I say that, bro. I don't know. Like when you hear them talk about this unity, I don't know. I don't know where you are. This is where my mind goes, right? As we talk about, we gonna bring the country to healing, and we gonna be one, and
Yeah, yeah, and or Biden mentioned that January 1st, 1863. When he mentioned that really rubbed me the wrong way
Hmm.
because mentioning that speech under the gaze of preserving the union and America being the space where we can dissent freely. I'm thinking about that whole period. January 1st, 1863 was in the midst of the bloodiest war ever ever fought by Americans. And that war was essentially to what you said, because black bodies don't matter. It was black bodies that were used to, raise the wealth of this country, raise the wealth of families. And we're still living under that gaze. So for the president to, you know, use the emancipation speech of Lincoln, but doesn't call for repentance.
I mean, Lincoln
And
didn't call for repentance.
right,
Lincoln didn't call
right,
for repentance. So,
right,
so
and that's the point that I'm saying. The point that I'm saying is I totally agree with you. That's all I'm saying. We're still operating under the same gaze, which simply means this is that these folk are negating who they are, and they are comfortable in their own shame. What they're saying is it's okay to repent, but we're not going to look inwardly and search our hearts, mind, and souls as to who we are for the mattering of black lives and for the humanization
but see, it's
of
a
black
matter for
lives.
me. It's a matter of what we gonna accept. What we gonna accept? Are we gonna accept
Well,
that posture that you say is exactly right? To me, that's exactly the posture that they have, right? Like,
right.
but you know, like Denny
Well,
Green said, they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. Like,
right, right,
we keep letting them off the
right.
hook.
You know, I posed a question in the chat that I'm in. I'm like, man, how many people wore their pearls? You know, I'm glad I ain't get no answers. I'm glad.
Man, look, I saw an
But
article in the Virgin Islands Daily News. In the Virgin Islands, we a damn colony. We a colony of the U.S. In the Virgin Islands Daily News, they talking about a headline on the front page. Local AKAs celebrate their soror. I'm like, oh Lord, we ain't even gonna get nothing out. The Virgin Islands ain't even gonna get a damn thing out of Kamala Harris being a soror. Ain't gonna get
yeah,
us not a piece of legislation. Ain't gonna get us not an extra. Ain't gonna get us full citizenship.
yeah,
We gonna
yeah,
still be a colony.
yeah. I really think about that overarching gaze because we as black people, and I say we because I'm talking about the community, the black community, collectively, whether we want to agree with it or not, but this is the collective matter because this stems to what you say. Well, what are we gonna do, right? What we have done in our collective community is we've taken on and projected the normative gaze of white supremacy. We're not even willing to do the work to call out their mess and hold them accountable, hold their feet to the fire. So, you know, for me, it's like just another old day, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's easy to say that for real, for real. We can get caught in that. Like we
right,
already know. We already talked about the reality that folk just
right,
ain't finished beating their head against the wall. And I ain't about to keep singing the same song. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
what does it take then? What does it take? What should we be looking at in this whole effort to unify America? What should be the posture? What should be the questions? What should be the hope, the goal, the aim of the black church in this effort to unify America, to make oneness prevail? Like, what does the black church, as we, here we are, I know y'all don't really deal with Eucharist too much, right? But when we talk about Eucharist, right, and the bringing of the offering, that what you have, all things come of thee, O Lord, and of thine own have we given thee. What we have, what we have been able in this creation care, intending to this world and this life that you have given us, we bring it and we present it to you, for you to take this offering that we have as we lift it up to you, for you to consecrate that offering and turn it back to us, return it to us as something that is salvific, something that is for the salvation of the soul. What, as we come together, quote unquote, as one people, or at least as one people in the same country, what is that offering that the black church brings to the holy table, if we are to see this place as beloved community?
I'm laughing because I have an answer to that.
Uh, Thanks be to God.
I think I do. The greatest offering that we can bring to that table is ourselves.
Yeah,
I
but
think
what does
about.
that mean though?
So here's what that means. What that means in this book, and I think I sent you excerpts of it. I'm reading a book right now called Black
Oh, yeah,
Suffering.
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, he's my professor at Virginia Union, Dr. James Henry Harris, talks about how Nat Turner, you know, really embodied his consciousness as an act of worship against white supremacy and American chattel slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Harris says in regards to Nat Turner was he was willing to be, though, the slave master shaped policy on the plantation. He was willing to be because the policy that slave master shaped on plantation was, embraced by American culture. Each slave plantation can be its autonomy in American chattel slavery. But in the midst of it all, Nat Turner was like, there can't be no unity unless we burn this thing down. And so for him, his act of worship was to take up arms and kill his slave master, with a group of people, who were enslaved. And they marched from plantation to plantation. That's his act of worship. Check this out. 1861, a white man does the same thing. I mean, he doesn't go from plantation to plantation, but he goes to the armory to bear arms and fight against slavery, fight against American chattel slavery, the white supremacist system that created American chattel slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this, to answer your question, there can't be no unity unless we're willing to burn it down and start over.
But you see, here's the thing though. These white folks was trying to burn it down just the other day.
They were.
Now, I'm not saying that we need to take up armed insurrection, right?
Right.
I would hope. I'm also not saying that we don't. Let me be clear. I would hope that we don't have to. I would like to believe that in a civilized society, quote unquote, we should be able to embark upon revolutionary change in a society, creating something that is more becoming of beloved community without the shedding of blood or anything of that sort.
But
You
let me
know,
ask you this question:
what's that?
is that not the history of America? Have we not had a revolution without the shedding of blood? America's against the redcoats. They armed themselves with whatever they had and shed blood. Is that not a part of the history of the Civil War? They armed they armed themselves and shed blood. That's all America knows. That's who America is.
Look, that is true. That is very true. Um, I just know. I mean, as trained as white folks are, and this is why the problem is this is why the problem is so thick, right? This is
Right.
why there's such a show of force. Do you
Yeah.
think we got we got the not fucking around coalition?
Mhm.
You remember them men
Mhm.
and women, right? Them brothers and sisters, right?
Mhm.
Um, do you really believe that the Capitol would have had 25,000 military troops if they was worried about the not fucking around coalition?
Hmm.
There would have been heavy force. Don't get me wrong. We know if it was us, there'd have been heavy force, but they didn't need. They wouldn't have felt the need to bring out 25,000 troops. They brought that show of force because these white boys got stock. They got arms. They got all kind of arms. Yet
Yep.
and still, as much training and as much arms as they got. That's why they go into the military. You can read, what's the name of that book I just downloaded the other day, man? A PDF. I still found a free copy of it. The Turner Diaries.
Oh yeah.
One of them white supremacist manifestos.
Yeah, Doc. That's a really good read. I'm gonna download it and read it myself.
You know, it is their duty to go into the military.
Yep.
So as trained as they are, as armed as they are, they still were no match for the Capitol Police on its heels.
Yep.
Man, we ain't gonna succeed in no armed insurrection, man. Get out of here.
We're not.
We're gonna get laid out.
Listen, listen. I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying that it's a part of the
Oh,
cultural fabric of this
it's
country,
but see, no, wait. It is part of the cultural fabric of whiteness.
which is steeped in this country.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. We gotta go back further than that. And this is to me, when we talk about the power of blackness, right? The power of a
Hmm.
different way. All they have known is bloodshed.
Right.
You know what I mean? When you read that work, I can't remember his first name. Hoffman is his last name. Scholar, white man, wrote about why Europe conquered the world. It was because they had practice in using weapons of war against each other. And they were willing to exact more violence on others than anyone else was willing to exact upon them.
Hmm.
Why Europe conquered the world. You get a copy of that and read that. It'll blow your mind. So even with that degree of violence, right? Like, that's the only way they know.
Right.
When we talk about the gift of blackness, it's the gift of showing them another way.
Whether they take it or not, it's
Right.
our duty to show, to
Right.
embody it.
That's what I'm like. What is the offering that we bring? And not just offering when we talk about black suffering. And I've been reading the excerpts that you've given me, but I haven't read the book. But
Right.
not to talk about black suffering like for our own good. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. I just referenced that book to talk about Nat, what he did. I really believe that at the end of the day, the best thing that we can offer is being ourselves. And this is what I mean, bruh. You know, is our willingness to do whatever it takes, like you're saying, to show another way. Really, I say it like that, to be who we are. Because that's the best thing that we can do. I mean, honestly.
But do we even know what that means?
No, we don't know what it means because, but I could tell you this: the start is remembering. It's through the memory. So let me reference the book again, Black Suffering. Here's an example of what that looks like. So the author gives recount, his account rather, um, of when he was reading the book Beloved by Toni Morrison. And he said it took him like 25 years for you to read it. And he said it took him so long, it's not because, he didn't understand ghosts and stuff like that. It's a scary reading or it's a, horror, all of that. It wasn't because of that. It's because he wasn't willing to face his own deep pain, his deep suffering, both personally and systemically, for being who he is in this country, steeped in all of the gore of American chattel slavery. He could not face that. And for many people, we can't even watch Birth of a Nation. I'm talking about the story of Nat Turner, for instance, or 12 Years a Slave, the story of Solomon Northup. We can't watch this stuff because it's too painful. And we don't want to face that. Who wants to be a part of that heritage and that lineage whereby, our ancestors were treated this way? You know, that's difficult. And this is where we are. Honestly, I really believe that. That's why our memory has been disimpaired, it's been dismembered, because we're not willing to do that courageous work of getting through that. We know white folk ain't gonna do it.
Man,
They they,
yeah, I
they
mean,
just own it.
for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. And the reason I asked this question, right? It gets back to something else we said we was going to talk about, right?
Right.
The reason I asked this question is like, okay, we have these esoteric conversations,
Yeah.
and to the intellectually minded, they may matter. Um, Talking about some real stuff, but at the same time, make it plain. You know, what does this mean when the rubber meets the road? What does this mean for the practice of faith? Um, what does this mean for the direction of the church? When we talk about unity, what do we mean when we talk about unity? What do we mean when we talk about oneness? One with what? One,
Mm.
when we talking about humanity, right? When we talking about peoples, when we talking in basic about white and black, we talking about oneness in black and in white. But what form of whiteness and what form of blackness are we talking about oneness with? What are we talking about? Subjugated blackness, inferior blackness, and at oneness with superior whiteness? What are we talking about? And it don't really matter what they talking about, because of course we know they talking about superior whiteness. But what are we talking about? Are we still talking about inferior blackness coming to be reconciled with whiteness, even if we don't believe that whiteness is superior to us? Understand that even if we don't believe that whiteness is superior to us, if we still suffer from inferior blackness, we are still wrestling with an imago Dei that is not quite imago Dei.
Whew.
And so, what sense of self are we bringing to the table? Are we saying has to be brought to the table in order for this oneness to be had? yeah, we may be looking at what the Democrats need to do or what, the government needs to do in order to bring about healing. We want to see a bill for this. And yeah, I can take note to the fact that Biden got immigration bills coming out the door, got executive orders on all kinds of stuff coming out the doors. First few hours, the ink ain't even, he ain't even in the White House yet. Some of them things already happened. Muslim bans revoked and all kinds of stuff. We ain't seen nothing for our demands, and we could be watching for that. We could be thinking about where are our demands, but what are we demanding from ourselves as we talk about making
Right.
oneness, as we talk about
Right.
becoming one? What is the
Right.
self that we believe of
Yeah.
necessity must exist in order for us to become one? What is the
Yeah.
self that must be presented? What is the black identity that must be presented to America in order for us to be
Yeah.
truly one?
Yeah. 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 And can we surrender, embrace, and accept that identity of oneness? I'm reminded, as you talk, man, my mind kind of goes back to a young lady. They say she was born around 1820, 1822. It all depends. But we know she died March 13th, 1913. Her name is Harriet Tubman. And I really kind of look at her life. She's my favorite person of all time. No offense to my mom. Shout out to my mom. Shout out to my dad. Shout out to my family. But Harriet Tubman, to me, is the greatest example to me. Outside of others, like Nat, Denmark Vesey, Martin Luther King, even Malcolm X, whose father pastored a Baptist church. He was under a Baptist minister. Before he started the Nation of Islam. But nevertheless, Harriet Tubman is a product of the Black church. She's AME Zion. You know, um, Harriet Tubman frees her family because she got word that her master was going to sell them off. He wasn't making enough money. And so she prayed a prayer. So, we're talking about faith, imago Dei, all of this stuff. Harriet Tubman prays a prayer, an imprecatory prayer. Does God kill this man because he's not going to change? And 6 days later, her slave master dies. His widow is now really, you know, just urgently trying to sell him. She goes and run away, but she notices that she's by herself. And what she decides to do was make pilgrimages back to the plantations and not only free her family, but other people. To me, that's a practical example of being beloved community. Saving people that looks like you and I so that we can be who we are. Harriet Tubman is the only person who takes passengers to Canada because she said she didn't trust America with her people.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's the ultimate example of a person who embodies beloved community. That's my thought.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you bring because that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about her as when we talk about embodies beloved community. I was looking at it more so in the standpoint of no disagreement, but still looking at it more
Yeah,
so from the standpoint of as a conductor in the Underground Railroad, the conductor par excellence. That she is the quintessential example of a pastor.
yeah,
Um, from the priestly standpoint, maybe not so much in terms of the liturgical understanding of Protestantism, of which Baptist is a part of, but from the liturgical understanding the more mainline denominations, the ones that are closer to Catholicism, the ones that are closer to Orthodoxy, where there is a set and standard liturgy. There is this understanding of liturgy as this process, this anaphora, this raising, this going from this life to the life to come, this transformation, this transcendence rather. And the idea is, as Moses leading the Israelites through the wilderness unto the promised land, the priest goes before us to lead the people unto the promised land. Sister Harriet exemplifies that, beyond reproach. She went before us to freedom, and then came back and got us. You know what I mean? Then came back and got folk.
Right.
Wasn't just talking to them about some place that she ain't never seen, that she ain't never been to.
Right.
She had went there beforehand and seen the space, and was coming back to proclaim, to evangelize.
Yes.
To the faithful, to those looking for faith, those looking for a way, came back to evangelize to them that they might find the promised land and become beloved community.
Yes.
Along that same lines, that's why I've been asking that question as we look to talk about unity. Because again, as Sister Harriet probably had to deal with, again, our people ain't trying to lead the plantation. So we want, quote unquote, unity with the larger swatch of America, which is fine if we understand what is this unity that we say we want. What is this unity? What, Harry, what type of unity did Harriet Tubman have with the white folks that she worked with? Because she did still work with white folks. Her unity wasn't the same as my unity and your unity. You know what I mean?
Right.
She was a different kind of oneness with them.
Man, let's unpack that really quickly, man. I want you to go deeper into that kind of unity, because, man, we might can get some traction on this.
Dude, all I can do is speculate on what it was, right? Because
Okay.
you by far more versed in her history than I am. But I would have to imagine, right? Like the way that she was one as a free woman, understanding what it meant to be a free woman, understanding how precious it was to be a free woman, understanding how rare it was to be a free woman, understanding all that she had done in order to be a free woman, that the oneness she had with any white folks that she was able to trust was a different kind of oneness than you and I have most of the time. That her oneness was of a different caliber.
Right. So I don't really. So to your point, as we talk about this oneness, you know, Harriet had lines drawn in the sand.
Right.
It's either you are with what I'm doing or you're not. One of her famous quotes, she would always say, is I freed 1,000 slaves, and I could have freed 1,000 more if they knew they were slaves. Though she was getting invites, from those women who were feminists, part of that kind of women's suffrage. And Harriet Tubman said this: "I'm not a feminist. that ain't my platform.
Right.
What I am doing is I am trying to build beloved community with my people who were enslaved." That's what drove her. So she was kind of like volunteered or voluntold by people who were generals and leaders of the Union Army. Was like, okay, we need you to spy. And so Harriet Tubman's like, okay, fine, I'll spy, And I use this as a way for me to go in the plantations and free slaves.
Mm-hmm.
She never lost insight or never lost, her mission, her vision, her purpose of her existence,
Mm-hmm.
which was this to not only be free, but so that I won't be free by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And to
Mm-hmm.
me, that is the essential essence of beloved community. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be free by myself. I want to be
Right.
free with other people who look like me, who's a part of the same lineage, of American chattel slavery.
Right. Right. But unlike most of what we have out here, she was presenting a way.
Yes.
And she was coming alongside, which we talk about pastoring. She was coming alongside the faithful in a very real way, coming alongside them and ushering them unto freedom.
And we should unpack that very real way because as we talk about the black church and what's our role, I think we need to really take a deeper look of our leadership in the oldest institution of the black community. It's the black church. And so it was the black church when families was being dismembered and splintered by slave master. It was the invisible institution that started at the brush harbors that took people and we formed a family.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what Harriet Tubman is doing really in a real embodied way is that she's using her faith tradition that she learned from the Hush Harbor and built relationships with these people.
Mm-hmm.
She made sure that we embodied the vision to get to the promised land, which for her was in Canada, you know, um, and she did it by any means necessary. So when we say walk with her, she was loving.
Mm-hmm.
She carried a loaded gun and she will put it to your head and say, move or die. That's a direct quote. Move or die.
The
And I
good
think
shepherd
as
lays his life down for his sheep.
exactly. And we got a lot of shepherds that's pastoring our black churches that's not willing to pull out their gun and say move or die.
Because they
Because
ain't free.
and right. And not only are they not free, but the people who hold them accountable in those leadership positions ain't free because they get dehumanized on their jobs and they bring that trauma into the church and try to lord over somebody else.
So it's like
It's this vicious cycle.
when I look at Sister Harriet, because she was effective.
Very.
She got people on board. She got all them white folks in line helping set up railroad stations to get folks to freedom. She got white folk to risk it.
And they gave her money. They financed
And so the
her
question then becomes
evangelistic
is
campaign.
this is what I'm talking about. The type
Yeah.
of unity that she had. She wasn't begging them for money.
Nope.
They was
Well,
giving her money because
yeah.
they wanted to be part of. They wanted to make sure that they were
Yeah.
part of what she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't begging them because she
Mm-hmm.
was going to do what she was going to do with or without their help.
Mm-hmm.
She was giving them the opportunity to be part of the movement of God's people.
Right. They gave her a platform. They said, come speak. And she would speak. She wasn't begging, she was speaking.
Right.
And
Right.
they gave her money. Now, let me say this, Jabril, though, to your point. Because you mentioned earlier is that there are people who are liberals, conservatives, we'll use that vernacular, who still have the ideology of whiteness that existed even back, probably more so, more overtly during antebellum, right? Lincoln, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think his view was of black people? Though his family could not afford slaves,
He wish he could have.
but right, the first 16 presidents for sure were white supremacists.
Oh, every last one of them, including
Every
Barack
last
Obama,
one.
was a white supremacist. Again, you don't
So
got to be white to be a white supremacist.
exactly. And even white supremacists support the vision of oneness, in terms of
Right.
Harriet Tubman's evangelistic mission.
But it's a matter of what do we believe about oneness? What do we believe about unity?
Right.
What type of oneness are we willing to accept?
And this is the thing. This is why we are, having this dialogue, this discussion, and using the narrative of Harriet Tubman, because it's through those stories, it's through the narratives whereby I really believe we remember what has been dismembered. And from that remembering, we can now speak what oneness looks like. But we have to be willing to do the work, both personally and communally. We got to be willing to do that work.
But that's the thing for me, right? We just can't be apathetic, and that's the point for me, right?
Right.
Like we hear this call for oneness, and the tendency is like one of my brothers sent me a message like it's done, we got a new president, it's done, and I'm like, yep, and now most people gonna go back to sleep, right? Like
Exactly.
we gonna hear a more sensible sounding government say to us, we want unity, and everybody gonna say, whew, somebody wants unity and not the division like the last guy, because the last guy was all about we want division, and we'll forget that America been appealing to unity since we got here.
Man, the president before him was appealing to unity, hope.
Look,
Yes, we can. I
look,
mean,
they've been appealing to unity since 1776. It's enshrined in the Constitution, a more perfect
it
union.
is.
We haven't seen that more perfect union exist for us yet, include us yet. So, what type of union are we talking about? Are we talking about a union where our opinions and our thoughts and our values matter? And are we in the condition of self whereby we are able and wholeheartedly willing to present our opinions, our views, our values as mattering? Because if we are not, then I don't see how we're going to get a oneness that's worth having. But what do y'all think? I'd be interested to know. Can we have oneness in America? Can we have unity in America with a black lives that does not matter? With a black lives that has not come to realize its essential mattering? What are your thoughts? Let us know. Because a charge to keep we have, brothers and sisters. A God to glorify. A never dying soul to save and fitted for the sky. We done come a long way, and they're going to be rolling out all kind of firsts for you. You got the first Indian, you got the first black woman, you got the first woman, you got the first this, the first that, all wrapped up into one. We have come a long way. But Lord, let them fool you or even try to school you. We ain't there yet. So let us march
Far
on
from it.
till victory is won. Peace.